Looks like we're live. I must have bumped that button twice. How's it going, folks? Good to see you. Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Camden, Maine. It's a beautiful, beautiful fall day out here. We've been having a great time with the grandkids and seeing the fall colors and all that. And so that's why I'm a little late today, because we were out there visiting the site of the Maine Cabin Masters. I don't know if you've seen that show or not, but we got to go see where they film it, and that was fun. My daughter loves that show, so she wanted to go see that this morning. We just got back. So President Trump went to Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, to a peace conference. It was a very interesting peace conference, simply because we have some footage here of, uh, let's see, signing. This is President Trump and world leaders signing. You see the dictator of Azerbaijan there on the left side of the screen, and you see the uh, jackass in charge of the UK, Keir Starmer, over on the right side of the screen. There are a bunch of Arab leaders and world leaders that all came together, everybody from Italy to Spain to Qatar and UAE and a bunch of places. But, there were two entities that were noticeably absent from this quote unquote peace deal, and that was uh, both Israel uh, and Hamas. So the two parties that need to make peace, let me get this straight: the two parties that are fighting are not there signing the peace deal. The peace deal is being signed by a bunch of countries that are not actually involved, except the United States. The U.S. is involved just in terms of, we've got troops on the ground. We've been supporting Israel with military equipment and intelligence and things like that for the entirety of this war. So, I mean, if anybody anybody that was there yesterday has any skin in this game, it's definitely the United States. Now, President Trump went on to be somewhat effusive in his praise for Qatar and for Turkey, and even Viktor Orban, who was there, the idiot from Hungary, who has, he's been very pro Russia, so he's not a friend, I would say. And again, of course, Turkey is not our friend either, but President Trump likes to pretend that they are. President Trump went so far as to sort of admit, well, Erdogan is not really a very good guy. He's a strong guy, and I like strong guys. And maybe a failing in me may not be the best thing, but I just like strong guys. Which I don't think there's anything wrong with liking strength. But there's two kinds of strength. There's righteous strength and evil strength. And if somebody is a strong man but they're evil, probably that's not the kind of guy you want to be friends with. But President Trump doesn't differentiate. He likes strong guys. And so here's what he had to say about Turkey.
And another man who's been a friend of mine for a long time. I don't know what it is. I like the tough people better than I like the soft, easy ones. I don't know what the hell that is. It's a personality problem, I suspect. But this gentleman from a place called Turkey has one of the most powerful armies actually in the world. It's much more powerful than he even lets known. If you look at some of the recent conflicts, he was at the top of them, and he was winning them, and he did win them. And he doesn't want any credits. He doesn't want anything. He just wants to be left alone. He's a tough cookie, but he's been my friend. And every time I've ever needed him, he's been there for me. So I just want to thank President Erdogan, Turkey, great guy. When NATO has a problem with him, because he is difficult, they call me. They said, would you do me a favor? Could you speak to Erdogan? And I do.
So let's break down. I mean, we all know President Trump just kind of says stuff, And he's kind of a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. So he maybe doesn't think through everything that he's saying. But what he just said there, if you break that down, is that Erdogan is a pretty tough guy to deal with, and NATO has a lot of problems with Erdogan. Why is that? Well, because Erdogan is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. He is supporting ISIS. We have proof of them giving millions of dollars to ISIS, sheltering ISIS fighters, and repurposing ISIS into the Free Syrian Army and now the Syrian National Army, and supporting terror across Turkey. We've got problems with Turkey supporting Azerbaijan in their genocidal war against the Armenians, and even sending troops and drones into Armenia to kill Armenian Christians. So yeah, that's a problem. So when NATO has a problem, they call President Trump because Erdogan's not playing ball, and so President Trump calls Erdogan, and Erdogan will moderate his activities if President Trump asks nicely. Is that something to brag about? That this guy's such a bad actor. He's such a bad character that they got to call on President Trump to see if they can get him to sort of rein it in a little bit and maybe not be quite as evil. President Trump said before that Erdogan has been at the top of some of these big conflicts, some of these most recent conflicts, and he always comes out on top. He always wins. What conflicts is he talking about? Well, he's been fighting in Syria and murdering Syrian civilians, murdering Kurdish civilians. He said he's currently occupying the northern part of Rojava, which is the eastern part of Syria. And he's got thousands of troops in Syria right now. He's been supporting HTS and their takeover of Syria. He's, like I say, been involved in the conflict against Armenia. Uh, this is not a good person. He has brutally repressed his own people. He's tanked his own economy. He has jailed more journalists than any other country on planet Earth. I personally cannot go to Turkey because I will end up in prison. And I'd like to think that if that happened, President Trump could call Erdogan and say, hey, why don't you let Holton go? And he probably would. But I mean, not to be too critical, but it's not a good look for America. And this is the kind of thing that makes world leaders around the globe both afraid of President Trump because he's so unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do or say next. And also sort of, they laugh at him behind his back. And if they're laughing at him, they're laughing at America. So anyway, I wasn't super happy with that. He did, uh, also praise Qatar for making this peace deal happen. And what you see is President Trump talks about, he's talking about this peace deal, which again does not include any of the players who are fighting. Iran's not there. Israel's not there. And Hamas is not there. Hezbollah was not there. The Houthis are not there. So all of the people who are actually fighting had nothing to do with this peace deal. And President Trump talks about the fact that he just brought peace in the Middle East for the first time in 3,000 years. Maybe not quite. Maybe not quite. Here's what he had to say about that. Uh, oops. I think I might have.
If you look at
Nope, not that one. There we go. This is the photograph of the peace deal right there. Yeah, that's again, all of the people in that picture are not fighting. They didn't have anything to do with this. So, folks, I want to talk about, before I go any further, since we've got a bunch of people watching here, a couple thousand people on, let's talk about real quick the time of the year that we're in, you see the leaves changing on the trees back there. That's your cue to sign up for Medicare. If you need to get signed up for Medicare, this is the time to do it. So it's that, the problem is it's it's kind of like a game show where you try to guess which plan is not going to bankrupt you, kick your doctor out, or charge you for just breathing. So look, the clock is ticking and the paperwork's endless. Most folks end up just kind of giving up and staying with whatever program they had 5 years ago, which is usually the wrong one. I mean, here's the deal: there are 24,000 different Medicare plans that you could get signed up for out there. And with that being the case, Chapter can actually help you get it right. They're the only national Medicare advisors who compare every plan that's out there, all 24,000 of them. Their advisors are on salary, which means there's no commissions and no pretending they just want what's best for you while putting you into the most expensive plan. When you call Chapter, you talk to a real person, not a robot, not a call center script reader. You're already on. If you're already on the right plan, they're going to tell you that too. But the most important thing you need to remember is that open enrollment is happening right now. And when it's over, you're stuck with whatever plan you picked up until next year. So do something smart for once. Call 636-812-6714. That's 636-812-6714. Got the number right here on the screen. And when you call that number, tell them Chuck Holton sent you, but don't wait because the window is going to slam shut real quick. So call that number, 636-812-6714, before it's too late. That is super important, folks. If you need to get on Medicare, this is the time to do it. Okay, so now they signed this peace plan. And like I say, I've got this here
Thank
somewhere.
you
Here it
very
is.
much, everybody. This is a tremendous day for the world. It's a tremendous day for the Middle East. And you can see that this is probably the greatest assemblage of countries in terms of wealth and power maybe ever assembled. And it's just an honor to be a part of it. We're going to be signing a document that's going to spell out a lot of rules and regulations and lots of other things. And it's very comprehensive, but we've already signed documents in the Middle East and having to do with Israel and Hamas and just about everything else. And it's really working out incredibly well. The hostages, as you know, were let go on time, on schedule. The very sad situation of bodies, which was always a sad situation, and they're being sought out, and they're working with many different people, finding some were brought in and some were not. And they're working out to find out where those bodies are. It's hard to believe that you even have to say something like that. It's so sad. It's so sad. But what's not sad is that we have finally, after, I guess they say 3,000 years, I've heard from 3,000 years to 500 years, but whatever it is, it's a lot. But this was the one, this was the granddaddy of them all. And frankly, I thought this was probably going to be the toughest, and maybe in many ways it was, but we had a lot of good talent. Steve Witkoff, Jared, and Marco, and Pete, and General Kane was so great. John Ratcliffe was incredible. We had an amazing array of talent, and we were helped by, in particular, the countries represented at this table. I will say, Tamim, you were fantastic, and your country is unbelievable, and I don't think they give you a fair shake. They talk about you as though you're not a nice person, and you happen to be a nice person. You happen to live in a little tough neighborhood. You're surrounded by everybody. And without you, this wouldn't have happened. And I just want to thank you very much. That's Qatar. And
So he's saying that he's very happy with Qatar. Hang on a second. I got to turn the monitor off on that. There we go. Is it very happy with Qatar, the country that was harboring the Hamas terror leaders and is still to this day. Uh, I mean, here's the question. How quickly would this war have gotten over if instead of buddying up to Qatar, President Trump had brought the full force of his will against Qatar at the beginning to give up those Hamas leaders, kick them out, arrest them, whatever, to stop supporting the terror. And I mean, that to me, that would have been step one. You got to go to the source of these things. Now, it took Israel and the United States almost 2 years, a year and a half at least, to actually finally go hard against Iran, which was sort of funding all this to begin with, Iran and Qatar. You know, Qatar gave billions of dollars to Hamas in Gaza that Hamas used to build tunnels and to build rockets and to, amass weaponry and things like that. So even if Qatar wasn't giving weapons per se to Hamas, they were giving money to Hamas, which Hamas was using for military purposes. And that obviously has got to stop. So we're going to take a look at, the actual uh, plan, the actual peace plan, and what it said, what these guys actually signed. And then we're going to talk about, among other things, what is going on in Gaza. All right. So, folks, do me a favor. Go to chuckholton.com and you can sign up over there for a whole lot of extra content. You can support the work we do and find out, see a lot of my reporting I do for Newsmax and CBN and others. We put everything over there. I've got a new book coming out before too long, and that'll be over there as well. So, that is I highly recommend you go to chuckholton.com. Okay. Uh, and make sure you hit the like button, please. We've got 2,500 people online. We need more likes there. That tells YouTube that more people need to be shown this content. And that's how the channel grows. It's been growing great, with like 13,000 new subscribers last month. That's pretty good. Been pretty happy with that. But so it was a glorious and euphoric day for President Trump. You can see there that it was very carefully choreographed with the gigantic sign right in front of President Trump that says Peace 2025. And look, I may be critical of some of the things President Trump said, but I say let him have this. I mean, I'm not critical that they decided to do this, and I'm not critical that he decided to kind of make it all about him in a way, and claim to have brought peace in the Middle East after 3,000 years. I think that definitely remains to be seen, but it bears pointing out that there are still hostages in Gaza. Hamas is already violating the agreement because they've only returned 4 of the 28 deceased hostages' bodies. Now, as President Trump said, we know that Hamas they say they're unable to find all of them. I imagine they know where more than 4 of them are. And so the question is, why aren't these being returned? I just saw right before we went live, uh, tweet somebody put up that said that Hamas had alerted the IDF that they had some more bodies that were ready to be turned over. And so the Red Cross was going in there to recover those. So it looks like we'll get some more of them back shortly. But as these world leaders were meeting around the table in Sharm el Sheikh, Hamas spoke publicly with the press and said, we're not agreeing to any disarmament, but that was one of the central tenets of this agreement. To further demonstrate that fact, Hamas has started a violent purge of any of their opposition uh, in the Gaza Strip, including massive street executions. Here's a still frame. Obviously, we can't show you what happened after this, but you can imagine they executed 7 guys and made all of the people in Gaza watch. But you see the people around them, they're all pumping their fists in the air and they're all screaming. When you watch the video, they're all screaming, Allahu Akbar. They're screaming, God is great. Let's murder some people here. This is fantastic. Uh, and these guys were, I don't know, they said that they were, uh, I don't know, I guess assisting the Israelis or somehow disloyal to, uh, you know, to Hamas. So I'm trying to see here if I've got.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much, everybody.
already
This
got that
is
one.
a tremendous.
There. Oh, so as a side note, Christiane Amanpour of CNN got herself in a little bit of hot water because she stated, as these hostages were being released yesterday, that the hostages in Gaza were actually treated far better than the. And I think some people seriously beg to differ. Here's what she said. Let's see here. What I just had it. Oh, there it is.
And I think for sure, people who start to talk to the hostages who've only just been released will find that it will take a long, long time for them to recover physically but also mentally. It's been a terrible, terrible 2 years for them because not only are they there, you know, they're probably being treated better than the average Gazan because they are the pawns and the chips that Hamas had. Now Hamas has given up all its leverage, by the way, by giving them all up. So that is a victory for.
Some people really took umbrage with that because your average Gazan was not being held in a cave for 2 years and being made to dig his own grave while he was being starved intentionally. And so she had to come out and apologize for saying that. And look, I get it. When you are making television, hours of television every day, like I do, uh, sometimes you just misspeak. You just say things wrong. I mean, when you have to put out so many millions of words every day, sometimes you just kind of don't put things in the best possible way. And I've been accused of that before. So we won't be too hard on Christiane Amanpour, and kudos to her for coming out and walking back that statement. But obviously, from looking at the prisoners, the hostages that were released yesterday, from hearing their stories of torture and abuse at the hands of Hamas, they were not being treated better than than the average person in Gaza. Life might have been tough in Gaza, but it wasn't that tough. Okay. Now we're gonna. Let's see here. I wanted to see if I could find this. I don't know if I have that. Okay, yeah, this is Israel redeploying. I showed you that the other day. Israel has pulled back to uh, that line. I think I have the map there. Yeah, there we go. Uh, this is the line, the yellow line they pulled back to. So Israel still controls that much of Gaza, and that's not going to change because if Hamas does not uh, give up their weapons and disband, then the Israelis are going to stay in 51% of Gaza, and Gaza is going to be 51% smaller than it was at the beginning of this war. It's going to stay that way. So, on top of that, again, Hamas not giving up its weapons, murdering people in Gaza. They're still stealing the aid. Israel was supposed to then open up after the hostages were all released. Israel was supposed to open up the Rafah crossing into Egypt and allow unlimited truckloads of aid to flow into Gaza. Israel has said now they're not going to do that until Hamas holds up its end of the bargain and releases the rest of the hostages at the very least. So we're going to have to wait and see if Hamas can come up with any more hostages. Um, it's going to be. I think it's likely we'll get, as I've said this before. It's very likely we're going to get some of the hostages back, the deceased ones, but it's likely we're not going to get all of them back. And so yesterday, Israel identified two of the four hostages that the deceased hostages that were turned over. They're still doing DNA analysis on the other two and trying to make sure they know who they are. Hamas told them which four they were, but they have to check. They have to make sure. Okay. So now let's go through the points of this plan because the United States said, President Trump put this plan together, but I think it's important to kind of clarify what it was that all of these countries signed. Because again, Israel and Hamas were not involved. So, what does this peace plan say? What was the document that President Trump signed yesterday, along with those Arab leaders? So, number one is it opens by welcoming the truly historic commitment and implementation by all parties to the Trump peace agreement. Of course, it had to be named after President Trump. He loves to put his name on everything. I mean, everything. He puts his name on everything. So I stayed at the Trump Hotel one time, and uh, I was I don't know if you've ever been to the Trump Hotel, but it's very fancy. I stayed at the one in Washington D.C. Very expensive hotel, very fancy hotel, and well, the first thing I noticed when I got into the room is that President Trump puts his name on absolutely everything, everything in the room. And so I'm wondering if I have this picture somewhere. I might be able to show you this picture. Let me see if I can find it here. This might work. Let's see if this works. So I noticed that President Trump put his name on everything in the room. I mean, it's on the curtains, it's on the wall, it's on the toilet paper, it's even on the shampoo. I mean, of all things, Trump shampoo. Well, I made the mistake of actually using that shampoo, and I'll tell you what, that was a big mistake because it took weeks for that to go away. I just, man, uh, no, I'm kidding. That didn't actually happen. That was photoshopped. But no, President Trump likes to put his name on everything, and fine. I don't actually have a problem with that. It's kind of what he's good at. It's called marketing. Uh, but all of the parties had to acknowledge the historic commitment by all parties to the Trump peace agreement. And then it pledged to implement the agreement to ensure opportunity for all people, Palestinians and Israelis, and then made references to humanitarian care, reconstruction, and stability. Then it mentioned that fundamental human rights should be protected, their dignity upheld, and then the respect for heritage and sacred connections must be paramount, whatever that exactly means. I'm not sure. Then it emphasized that meaningful progress emerges through cooperation and sustained dialogue. That's uh, diplomat speak for thank you, Captain Obvious. And strengthening bonds among nations serves the enduring interests of regional and global peace. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. It's being reported that roles will at some point be allocated for oversight, monitoring, and stabilization. That'll probably involve Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, maybe Jordan, and some other local actors. It puts together a framework that imagines a technocratic transitional authority, which excludes Hamas. What does that even mean, a technocratic transitional authority? Uh, I I don't know. I mean, there it says that Gaza is going to be watched over by a quote unquote board of peace or similar international body. You tell me what that means. I'm not sure. A board of peace. They're going to like, okay, we're going to appoint a board of peace and they're going to oversee Gaza in a technocratic way as a transitional authority to apparently eventually offering new uh, elections to the people in Gaza. What happens then? What happens if the people in Gaza elect Hamas again? Are we going to stand by that? It also calls for Egypt and Jordan to assist in training Palestinian security forces. Oh, joy. And it says that international stabilization forces may be deployed. Okay, that sounds good. That sounds like the multinational force and observers in the Sinai Peninsula. As a matter of fact, maybe they could just move those MFO guys north into Gaza because they're just in the Sinai right there, just south of Gaza. So maybe just expand the multinational force and observers and send them into Gaza. It envisages Israel retracting into further and further lines back behind where they can currently control, giving up more territory uh, as a condition for this to continue. So, if Hamas abides by the points of this plan, then Israel will agree to continue to pull back. They're never going to give up all of Gaza right now. That's not in the cards. They even the final step. It says eventually they would leave Gaza altogether, but it doesn't actually specify when that would happen or how that would happen. It just talks about an eventuality. The text of this agreement also allows for the possibility of a Palestinian state sometime in the future after quote unquote reform processes take place, not of Hamas, but of the Palestinian Authority. So if you understand, the Palestinian Authority does not govern anything in Gaza, and they haven't for many years. The Palestinian Authority exists in Judea and Samaria. They are separate from Hamas. They're at odds with Hamas in a lot of ways. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to extend the Palestinian Authority's rule into Gaza at some point in the future. But right now, the people in Gaza are saying absolutely not. We won't accept the Palestinian Authority. We don't like those guys. They're corrupt. If you talk to any Arabs in the West Bank, they don't like the Palestinian Authority. They say they're so corrupt. They just steal all the aid money, and so we don't like those guys at all. So this agreement that was signed yesterday talks about the Palestinians could possibly get their own state if the Palestinian Authority can submit to reform processes that will make it better. And again, this is all pie in the sky stuff because it's not actually these are not concrete steps. These are Pollyannic, pie in the sky. Oh, someday it'd be great if the Palestinian Authority just became wonderful and then became a legitimate governing authority that actually cared about its citizens and did not want to annihilate Israel. That'd be fantastic. And if they did that, then we could put them into power. But right now, even the Palestinian Authority is not on board with that. I don't believe there were any representatives of the PA at this signing either. So go figure. Now, the text of this, the preamble to this signing, this document, also includes references to the historical and spiritual significance of the land and tries to acknowledge that it is holy to all three: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Okay, that's nice. One interesting thing about this document is that it doesn't even mention Hamas when it talks about the governance roles in Gaza. Specifically excludes Hamas from direct control of Gaza when under this transitional authority. So far, Hamas has not agreed to that either. And then in talking about how to implement this, it cites different phases, like first and second phase, and talks about rules and regulations to do this. But here's what it does not do: there are no binding, detailed budget commitments for reconstruction or aid. It does talk about that partner countries, which would include the United States, will commit to give aid to Gaza to help rebuild with the rebuilding process. But it doesn't obligate any amount of money. And you've heard me say more than once that it's likely that the United States is going to end up paying for a whole lot of this. But so will Qatar, and so will Saudi Arabia and the UAE and other countries as well. Now, there's no comprehensive enforcement or verification mechanism spelled out either. So it doesn't talk about who verifies any of this stuff happening. It doesn't give any recourse if there's violations. It doesn't specify uh, exact withdrawal lines or timelines or troop redeployments or who's got jurisdiction over any of this. It's all just very ambiguous. It doesn't talk about the role of local political actors or how elections might factor into any transition that takes place. It does not address clearly the disarmament of Hamas or what to do with Hamas after they're disarmed, whether or not they can be integrated into any new government entity. And it doesn't compel Israel to fully withdraw from Gaza at all. So there's a lot that this doesn't do. Let's just put it that way. And that's, you know, not all that surprising. Now, I wanted to talk about um, this video here because I'm going to see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find where this is a pretty interesting video with President Trump when he was shaking hands with all the world leaders. We have to see what um, that looks like. Let me see here. If we go here. So this is President Trump shaking hands with Macron. Look at him. He won't let go. And they're talking here. They're kind of whispering to each other. Now, and Macron's like, let go of my hand. No, let go of my hand. No, I'm going to break your arm. Let go of my arm. President Trump's like, no, I won't. I'm not going to let go of your arm. So what was that all about? I'm going to play that again, so I want you to watch it. Now, they had a lip reading expert watch this exchange and try to figure out what exactly they're saying. And apparently President Trump is like really taking it to Macron, like, hey, you're no help at all, buddy. And Macron's like, you better let go or we're going to see what happens. And President Trump's like, bring it. I can't wait to see what happens. That kind of thing. I mean, it's one of these, when you see world leaders that don't like each other, mostly they try to be diplomatic when they're forced to be together. They'll sort of be cordial. Hi, nice to see you. And then, just that leave it at that. That's not President Trump style. President Trump style is like, I'm going to grab your hand. I'm not going to let go. And I'm going to tell you what I think right in your ear, right here in front of everybody. And we're going to see how you respond. And you can tell that there's some bad blood between President Trump and President Macron. And I love it because President Macron is a communist weenie. And I think that's fantastic. I, I love it when President Trump does things like that. Uh, maybe it's not the most couth thing to do or the most diplomatic thing to do, but I don't care. I think one of the best things about President Trump is that he really doesn't have much in the way of a filter, and he just says what he thinks needs to be said, even if you're sitting right there in front of him. And so I think that's pretty fantastic. So all right, we've been going now for how long? We've been going 41 minutes. Let's go over and answer some questions here. I think my team has been updating the questions. I just need to pull up the question sheet. Okay. Harry JB says, what does Trump mean by 3,000 years of conflict or 500 years? I think what he's talking about is ever since biblical times, the Israelites have been at war with their neighbors. And I just solved it. Not so much. Did you hear that Israel dropped a bomb on some Hamas fighters in Gaza overnight last night? So, and not only that, but there was an incident where an Israeli checkpoint saw some Palestinians approaching their checkpoint, and they have standing rule: don't get within 300 yards of our checkpoints. Like you cannot approach any closer than 300 yards. And these guys came closer than that, and Israel yelled at them. They kept coming. Israel fired warning shots. They kept coming. So Israel liquidated those people. That happened yesterday. So does it sound like this conflict has been solved? I mean, we don't have major military operations happening in Gaza for the moment. But if Hamas doesn't disarm, you are going to see more. So I don't know if President Trump wants so badly to go down in history as a president who was a peace president. I love that. I mean, that's commendable for sure. Now, as to his reasoning, he said, uh, just, I don't know, the other day in a speech, he talked about why he's trying to do this. And he said, I don't really think that I'm actually going to make it into heaven because, and the inference there was that because I'm not good enough, I've done a lot of bad things in my life. And so, but he said, maybe I'll just get a little, God will cut me some slack, maybe not send me to the hottest part of hell, because I made a lot of people's lives better by bringing peace around the world. So basically what he said in that speech was that he's trying to earn his way to heaven, or at least a little closer to heaven than he would have been otherwise, by doing good things for the world. And let me just tell you something, folks. If you're not a Christian, that might sound like a really rational thing to say. But if you are a Christian, if you've ever read your Bible, what you will realize is that is not Christianity at all. Let me explain it to you this way. Okay, I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible. If we had a big swimming pool full of muck, and smelly, slimy, green muck, okay, and I jumped in the deep end of the pool, and you jumped in the shallow end of the pool, and then we both got out, which one of us would be less smelly? Neither one. I mean, I'd say which one we would both smell just as bad. We'd both be wet. And it's not like you could say, well, I'm not quite as wet as the guy who jumped in the deep end. And so therefore I don't smell. No, you're still going to smell like the pond. You're going to smell like all that muck. And what the Bible says is that you cannot go to heaven. Now think about it. Heaven, by definition, is a perfect place. It has to be. Heaven has to be perfect, or it's not going to be heaven. I mean, what's the point of going to heaven if it's not perfect? And the Bible talks about it. It's perfection beyond anything we can even imagine. The most perfect thing we can think of is just like looking in a through a dirty mirror compared to what heaven will actually be like. So if heaven is perfection, and I have even a hint of that nasty smell, that slime on me, it's not like God can say, oh, well, you're not as smelly as this guy over here, so we'll go ahead and let you in. Because if he lets me in, then that smell is going to enter heaven. That sin, that dirtiness is going to enter heaven, and heaven will no longer be perfect. The only way I can get into heaven is if I am perfect, sinless. And we all know none of us are sinless. And so none of us, nobody, has any chance of getting into heaven. It doesn't matter how many good works you do. If you do one bad thing in your entire life, you're no longer perfect. And therefore, you would ruin heaven if God let you in. You can't get in. So you might say, well, there won't be anybody in heaven then. Well, no, here's what the Bible says. The Bible says that Christ, God's Son, came to earth. This is like, I wrote novels. I'm a writer. I write novels. And if I want, if my one, if I wanted to meet one of my characters in my novels, there's only one way for me to do that. I can write myself into the novel, and then have an interaction with my characters. Well, that's what God did by sending his son to earth to live a human life, and he did it perfectly. He did not sin. And then he took all of the punishment for the sins that I've done and that you've done, and he took that upon himself when he died on the cross. The Bible says that the wages of sin is death. That's spiritual death, forever away from God, not in heaven. And so the only way I could ever get to heaven is not to live the best life I can. I can't earn it. I cannot get into heaven by doing good things because I've already done bad things, and there's no making up for that. But Christ died and took the punishment for my sin. And so he offers free pass for me. He offers to cover me with the blood that he shed on the cross. And when he covers me with that perfect, sinless blood, it washes away any sin that I had. And so it doesn't come down to me doing good works. It doesn't come down to me doing anything good. It only matters that I accept the free gift that Christ gave me by dying on the cross for me. And yeah, I'm going to want to do good things because I'm going to want to say thank you when I understand what it cost Jesus, what it cost God himself to make a way for a sinful, imperfect being like me to spend eternity in a place that's perfect without tainting that place in a perfect, sinless body. When I understand the price that God paid for that, of course, I want to do good things because that's how I say thank you to God for what he did. It's my way of saying thank you, but I don't earn it that way. So, look, I know President Trump has had this explained to him, and maybe he just didn't quite get it out. I wish I could sit down with him and explain to him, like, President Trump, you're not going to be able to earn your way to heaven. You're just not. It doesn't matter if you bring peace on earth, You're not going to be able to do it. But a way has been provided for you, and all you have to do is accept that. And your sins are forgiven, and off you go. You're on your way to heaven. Now, so President Trump claiming to have brought peace in the Middle East, I guess it remains to be seen. We'll have to see what happens. But the Houthis are still firing missiles. Iran is still threatening. There's still a whole lot of rancor. Israel's still striking in Lebanon. So there's not quite peace yet. Phyllis Bird says, did Bibi Netanyahu not go due to the possibility of being arrested? No, that wasn't why. President Trump invited him to go, and at first he said he would, but then he bowed out because of the Simchat Torah holiday. In reality, the reason that Netanyahu did not go is because several of the world leaders who said they were going said they would not go if Netanyahu was there, specifically Erdogan and the prime minister of Iraq. They said, nope, we're not going to go. We won't even land our plane in Egypt if Netanyahu is allowed to go. So in order to give President Trump his 15 minutes of fame in the limelight there in Sharm el-Sheikh, Netanyahu did not go. But he would have. He was willing to go. Ed Dungarian says, hey, Chuck, what's the Pentagon wanting Newsmax and other news sources to sign? The Pentagon is amending their press rules for the Pentagon, saying that if you're press and you're in the Pentagon, you have to wear a press badge. You cannot wander around freely. You have to be escorted, things like that. That's a change from the way it used to be. And a lot of outlets are really upset about that and are saying they're not going to sign that. They're saying that's a violation of press neutrality. I think the thing that they're most upset about is not the having to wear a press badge or be escorted around the Pentagon. It was some language to do with you can't put out anything that is not approved through the Pentagon first, meaning we have to. You can only report things that we like. And I think the language of that needs to be clarified to say we need to be able to look at whatever you're going to put out before you put it out to make sure there's nothing that violates operational security or national security in your report. That's an iffy issue. I mean, I understand. I've looked at it. I've been on both sides of that argument. When I was in the military, obviously you don't want the press reporting something that's going to get you killed. So, yeah, you want some limits on the press. And you realize that most of the press are leftist communists. And so they don't like you sort of by default. And they're looking for things to sandbag you with. But I also understand from the journalist point of view, look, either you trust me or you don't. Maybe they should just not give credentials to outlets that they don't trust. And not to sandbag them. But I think more press freedom is better. And so I'm a little on the fence about this whole thing, but I think if I had to fall off the fence, I would fall off on the side of Newsmax. Okay, CK, because look, let me just finish that thought, tie a bow on that, if you will. If you allow more access, the truth will get out. And if what you're doing is righteous, you don't have to be afraid of the truth getting out. And you don't have to be afraid of people twisting what's going on to make you look bad, because others will come in and tell the truth. That's the beauty of free press. But I get the national security implications of that, especially at the Pentagon. So, I mean, you don't want people sneaking around the Pentagon and, looking through people's files or anything like that. So, anyway. CK Rev 1916 says, when is the official deadline for the removal of Hamas? That's just it. They did not set a deadline. They just said that's one of the steps. And so Israel is going to have to decide at what point Hamas is not being serious about moving forward with this. And at that point, they're going to go hard again, go back into Gaza. I think President Trump might put a lot of pressure on Israel not to do that. That would be unfortunate. Hamas has to be disarmed. And so, if I mean, President Trump could just say, look, I put together a peace plan that would work, but Hamas has refused to abide by it. And so they got to go. So I'm going to allow Israel to do what they have to do. Let's hope that's what President Trump's take is going to be on that when the time comes. David Medina says, with all the living hostages returned, will the IDF still drop flyers to warn people if they're going to bomb a certain building? Yes, if Israel's going to bomb a certain building, that is their protocol. Israel cannot drop a bomb on anything in Gaza without a lawyer standing next to the guy who makes that decision and informing him whether or not it'd be legal for him to do so. So that's going to continue that way. Israel's not going to change its modus operandi or its TTPs in Gaza just because the hostages are not there. But they won't need to be quite as careful in moving through places because they won't have to worry about killing any of their own. TB says, Chuck, when you were in Kurdish, Iraq, did you ever meet or run across a military volunteer YouTuber named Sibdiv? Yes, actually, I did. I've met him and I've talked with him, and I still have him on my WhatsApp, and I still chat with him from, or yeah, I mean, I still have his number in here. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but yeah, I still have his number in here. MG323, will Netanyahu be held accountable for war crimes? I hope. I don't think so. Netanyahu, as far as I'm concerned, has not committed any war crimes. You might think he has, but you'd be wrong about that. So I think what Netanyahu has done has been completely justified. It's called war. That's what it's called. And war is messy. It's ugly. It's damaging. It's extremely costly. It's miserable. Creates a tremendous amount of human suffering, both civilian and military. And that is part and parcel of war. But every bit of suffering that has taken place in Gaza since October 7th, 2023, is all the fault of Hamas. It's not the fault of Israel. Lori W. says, what is Qatar doing in Idaho? So thank you for asking that question, Lori. Let me just start by saying the United States does joint training with dozens or maybe 100 or more countries around the globe every year. And we have foreign troops from foreign armies in the United States doing joint training with American troops all the time. All the time. We have done this for many, many decades. So we've had Turkish pilots, we've had Saudi pilots, we've had Afghan pilots, we've had Thai and Filipino pilots. I mean, people from all over the globe have been in the United States doing joint training. We even had a school at one time called the School of the Americas. Now it's got a different name. It's much longer. At Fort Benning, where we brought people like Manuel Noriega, the dictator of Panama. We brought people from all across the globe to this School of the Americas to teach them Western military tactics. So, especially for pilots, they come to the United States to learn to fly the American jets that they buy from America. So, if Qatar has been buying F-16s from the United States, they have to send their pilots to the U.S. to get trained to fly them. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. So the fact that Qatar is sending some of its pilots to an airbase in Idaho to do flight training is no big deal. It's not that I won't say it's no big deal. It's not a surprise. You can decide whether or not you think it's a big deal. You can decide whether or not you think we should be allowing any of these foreign military personnel into American soil. But the long and the short of it is, this is nothing new. So I'm not going to comment on whether it's a good or a bad thing. You can decide that. But I'll just tell you that it's not anything new. Lyle Smith says, when will we designate the Muslim Brotherhood an international terrorist organization? As far as I know, they are a terrorist, an international terrorist organization, FTO. Uh, I'm pretty sure Muslim Brotherhood has been designated an FTO. Christina Mina says, any mention of the financial accounting oversight of all this money that will be funding the redevelopment of Gaza? They talked about that there needs to be an oversight organization, but they did not lay out who it would be, how it would work, or anything like that. Denise says, are there tribes that are anti-Hamas in Gaza, but they're not Islamist? Not really. There are plenty of tribes that are against Hamas, but they're virtually all Muslim. I haven't heard of any Christian or non-Muslim tribes in Gaza that are fighting against Gaza. I don't think there's enough Christians in Gaza to make a militia, really. I mean, Denise says, okay, I got that part. Michelle says, what's going to happen now that Hamas is executing the Palestinians that had turned against them during the war? Well, you're going to see violence increase. And if Hamas is able to reestablish dominance or control over all of Gaza, then you're going to see more fighting between Hamas and the IDF. No two ways about that. That's going to happen. Barbie says, since Hamas hasn't disarmed, will they use this opportunity to get more healthy hostages? They would. Believe me, they have been trained by Israel that hostages are valuable currency. And so if you feed the ducks, you get more ducks. You get more of what you reward and less of what you punish. So ask yourself, has Israel been rewarding or punishing Hamas over these hostages? I would say that by releasing almost 2,000 Palestinian terrorists, many of which that were serving life sentences for murder in Israel, that's encouraging Hamas to take more hostages. And I think at some point in the future, we will see those hostages. And like I've said many times in the past, I believe it won't necessarily be, taking hostages from Israel into Gaza. It will likely be hostages being taken in the West Bank areas, Judea and Samaria, or elsewhere in the world, whether that's Israeli tourists in Greece or America, even. Adam Forbes says, who built the structures in Gaza? Was built by Gazans or people in Egypt come to build? Now, most of that stuff was built by structures in Gaza were built by Gazans. The money for it was given by other foreign entities, whether it was Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United States. We were giving them hundreds of millions of dollars every year into Gaza. So a lot of that was going to pay for those things. Meg B says, are there going to be any consequences for not bringing back the bodies of the hostages? There already are. Israel has refused to open the Rafah crossing and has refused to pull out of that area, right? And they are going to continue striking. And they have restricted the amount of aid that is being allowed in right now until they get their deceased hostages back. Okay, so Meg B says, are there going to... Okay, I already got that. Elizabeth Wright says, MBS seems to have gone quiet. What role does he have in this agreement other than dollars? That's his biggest role in this, is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They're putting money into it, and they were there at the signing yesterday. Steve Biff Saunders says the International Criminal Court has an arrest warrant out for Netanyahu. When will they serve him? Well, he would have to go to some country that would be willing to serve that warrant. And Netanyahu's not going to go to any countries that would do that. So he would only go to countries that would refuse to serve that warrant for the time being. So that's that. Okay, folks, let me remind you again to please go to chuckholton.com and sign up over there as a supporter. You can support the work we do, help us continue to bring you this news from around the world. I do have a trip tentatively planned back to Israel in the next few weeks, and then from there on to Armenia. I may end up in Ukraine at some point because there's a lot that's developing over there in that war. Finally, some movement we're seeing. So all of that costs money, and we appreciate all of you for the support that you give, and it enables us to help a lot of people around the world as well. So thank you very much for that. If you would like to travel with me, I get that a lot from people. They say, hey, yeah, like Deborah Fay says, can I get in your backpack for that? I get that a lot. There is a way you can travel with me. We have tours that go to various places around the world every year. We have a tour scheduled to Armenia next June. If you say, why would I go to Armenia? It just shows me that you haven't done any studying about Armenia, because Armenia, of all the places I've been on planet Earth, Armenia is one of the best possible places you could go. And so we do a tour to Armenia in June 13th to the 23rd. I think we've got like 2 rooms left. So if you want to go with us to Armenia, jump on that. We also have a trip going in April to Panama, where we live, which is more of a retreat. It'll be more relaxing, not as much, running around. Lots of good food, beautiful scenery, natural beauty, et cetera, and relaxation. So if you want to come just hang out and meet my monkeys and, have a cup of wine on the balcony or something at sunset, we're going to Panama together. We still have some rooms available for that. You can get there are links for that right there. Grace Holton just put up in the chat, holtonnews.com/Panama-tour. So you can go there, or we'll put it in the description of this video if you're watching later. So you can click on that. So if you want to go on one of our tours, that's the way to go. Michael Mansfield says, didn't we train the 9/11 pilots? Yeah, we did. They came and trained in the United States, not as military pilots. I was speaking specifically of the military. They came and trained, just paid for flight lessons at commercial flight schools in the United States. Okay. No monkeys in the backpack. You don't like monkeys? I don't know if I like you. I kind of hard to like people that don't like monkeys, because monkeys are, I like my monkeys. They're sweet. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, folks. That's all I got for today. I appreciate all of you, and coming to you via Starlink right there. That's my Starlink, which you all helped to purchase. And hopefully the audio has been better today because I've been on Starlink than it was yesterday when I was on the local Wi-Fi here. And so if you enjoyed this show and you helped pay for the Starlink, I highly appreciate it. That Starlink has saved our bacon all over the world. I've now got 3 of them because they come in so handy. So thank you very much for all of you. And again, if you've got to get on a Medicare plan, if you already have a Medicare plan, I highly recommend you check out Chapter. That's a company that will, for free, help you find the right plan. Just call that number, 636-812-6714, 636-812-6714. That's our sponsor for today. And look, I believe in it because I've seen how hard it is to get through all the flaming hoops that the government puts in your way to get signed up for Medicare. It ain't pretty. So if you need some help, you can get free help from Chapter and not a bunch of sales pitches. So check them out. All right. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time. God bless you.